Hi, my name is Paul Cotto, and I used to be Carissa's teacher in high school. And I hope you guys are behaving better than she did when she was in high school. Actually, she was a great kid. A couple of things. She asked me to talk about a little bit about Nigeria and about our project in Nigeria. Our project is called Cairo International Training Academy. And let me give about myself, my parents. I was born in Nigeria, and my parents are from Nigeria and from a little village called Kwoi, Kwoi. You can look it up on Google. And my dad was just one of those poor little African kids that was running in the village, and one day, to make a long story short, a missionary discovered him and thought that he had great potential and sent him to school. And as a result, he got his education. He really liked the American education, and so he thought all of his kids should get an American education. So we went to an all-American school through our whole life, and I ended up here in the States. Graduated from college, and now I'm teaching in Mason High School. So that's a little bit about myself. Let me talk a little bit about what I see in education. First of all, when I went back to Nigeria I hadn't been back for about 15 years or so. So I had a 15-year spell there where I really didn't know what was going on back in Nigeria. So when I went back, I went through a little bit of a culture shock because a lot of things had changed. I think things had gotten a lot worse than when I was a kid. And I think a lot of it had to do with education. And Nigeria discovered oil in the 60s. Actually in the 70s. In the 60s, they got their independence, and so most of the people farmed, and most of the gross national product was basically in farming, in agriculture. Then they discovered oil, and all the young people left the villages and went to the cities in order to get some oil money. And as a result, oil did a lot of things to Nigerian culture that I think was really not, I think was one of the worst things that could have happened to Nigeria, actually. First of all, corruption went up. The level of corruption went sky high because those people that actually were in power were stealing money. And they were not only stealing it in millions, but they were stealing it in billions of dollars. And they were putting it in foreign accounts. So that really did not help the Nigerian economy at all. And then everybody in Nigeria kind of left the farm and were catering to these politicians in order for them to maybe get a little kickback. And so as a result, throughout the whole society, everything changed. So that was one of the negative things that really has triggered the poverty that is in Nigeria right now. Right now, the average person lives on $2 a day, I believe. Actually, with the exchange rate today, it'd probably be like $1.50 a day. Okay, so imagine trying to live on that kind of income. Let me talk a little bit about education. When I went back to Nigeria, I noticed the schools were in terrible, terrible shape. The government schools and everything else. Number one, there wasn't that many of them, and number two, the ones that were there, you would have 60 or 70 kids in a classroom. This would be, when we're talking about a classroom, we're not even talking about the classrooms like we have here. It's really classrooms that, they had windows, but the windows were all broken out. The doors were in terrible shape. The kids usually would not even have a desk. If they did, there would be 6 or 7 people sharing the same desk. There were really not a whole lot of books. The teacher would be lucky to have a textbook that he was actually using to teach the class with. So a lot of stuff was just outdated, and the books that they had were from years and years ago, and were all torn up and taped up and all of that stuff. So for me, it was really sad. When I went back and I saw the condition in which these schools were in, I was heartbroken. And I went through that whole phase of, you expect somebody else to fix these problems. the United Nations or big corporations or whatever, you know. And it was just too daunting, you know. What is little old me going to do, you know? So I went through that stage, but then finally my wife basically said, you know, you keep complaining about this, but you don't do anything about it. So that kind of gave me a wake-up call, and I decided, well, you know what, I really should do whatever I can to try and change the condition of the place. What I find in third world countries, and this is just my own opinion, is that most of the leaders that they have in power are actually, they don't try to empower the people. I don't think that they really want education. I really believe that they're trying to suppress the people so that they can keep the power. I mean, that's just my own personal opinion, based on everything that I've experienced in starting the school. They were looking for bribes all the time, you know, in order for me to get any, if I wanted an inspector to come just check some of the buildings that we're working on, I would have to pay them, you know. I would have to transport them. I would have to find a house find housing for them so that they can come in and inspect my place. I would have to go through all of that. So in a lot of ways I see that, you know, they are not really encouraging education. They are trying to hold the little person down. And so that's kind of been my experience with that. I decided I would start Cairo International Training Academy for a number of reasons. First of all, we wanted to make it a boarding school, and that's kind of interesting. The reason we wanted to make it a boarding school is because a lot of those kids don't get a good diet. So, I mean, how are kids going to learn, or how are they going to pay attention in class when they're hungry, you know? So we wanted to make sure, number one, that they were being taken care of. Secondly, that they had a good place to stay. So we decided we were going to do actually a residential school. So the kids would come in, they would have dorms where they stayed, and we would feed them 3 meals a day. And then we'd make sure that they were actually in school. It's going to be a highly competitive school. We're expecting to have 30 students the first year, and then the second year we're going to move on to another 30, and we'll keep building it up till we have a complete high school system that is in place. And then we will look at expansion, because there is so much need for stuff like that, for schools, for good quality schools. And we want to keep the standards very high, because even though we're looking for 30 kids, I think we're probably going to get anywhere between 500 to 600 kids wanting to go to the school. So in one aspect, that's a good thing for us, because we can try and pick the best and the brightest. But on the other hand, it's kind of sad, because a lot of the kids that want to get in can't get in. We want to make it affordable. We don't believe in free schooling. I think part of the problem of Africa is that the West has always given them stuff. And it's not about giving stuff. We want them to actually begin to earn some things, to actually work themselves so that it's worth more to them. We think that by doing that, we're empowering them to actually change their own condition, as opposed to us coming in and trying to be the big savior, so to speak. So really, we're looking at making it affordable so that those that want to attend can attend, but it's not going to be completely free. Obviously, we'll be looking for sourcing. You know, all the time here in the States, we're looking for sourcing for how we're going to actually raise money and keep the school going. Because I really don't, even though we could ask the government to try and help us, I think part of the thing is when you do that, you tend to lose a little bit of, you give some of the power to the government, and then the next thing you know, the government officials are going to want their kids coming into this. The whole school is not designed for rich kids, it's for those that don't have an opportunity. And so that's one of the key things that KITA is looking to do. The question is often asked, well, how are African countries or the poor countries, how are they going to pull themselves out of these types of situations? I think part of the thing is education, you know. But in order, you know, those people, we have to understand, when they start to look at things, they're thinking about, what am I going to eat today? Whereas here in the States, I think we're beyond the point of what are we going to eat today, and so we have a chance to think ahead. Where in Nigeria, for example, people are so focused on what they're going to eat today, meal to meal. So when you start talking about education, they're like, well, how's education going to feed me? It's hard for them to make the connection that, you know what, if you become educated, then it's going to help you in the long term. So I think that part of the problem that we have with poverty in Nigeria, or in Africa in general, is that people are so invested in trying to make it day by day. For example, some people won't send their kids to school because they want the kid to work on the farm, okay? Which makes perfect sense because they have to be able to feed the family. And so rather than sending a child to school, which has long-term ramifications, we're looking at sending the kid to the farm so that he can produce enough food to feed the family today and tomorrow. Okay? So somehow the whole model of being able to feed the people, so I don't think you're going to be able to get education through their system unless there is a point where people can stop thinking about today and tomorrow and think long term. And that's a huge problem. I see that as a huge problem in Nigeria. I see that as a huge problem in everything, you know, in poverty, in conquering poverty in the third world. Sometimes as the West, we think, okay, we're going to go rescue them. So we're going to collect all this food and we're going to send it out to the poor people. No, I don't think that's the answer. That may be the immediate answer, but the answer is we have agricultural practices that we know here in the States. How can we take that, our knowledge, what we have, and teach these people how to more successfully use their farms? But I think the key for Nigeria is, number one, you have to look at how you're going to feed those people. The other problem is employment. How are you going to employ these people? I see a lot of kids that are out there that don't have jobs. They don't have the opportunity to work. They're not given that opportunity. I've even seen kids that have gone to the local universities. They come out with their degree. They're smart and everything else. But you know what? They don't have a job. They don't have anybody that offers them employment. They don't have the capital. They don't have the financing to be able to even start their own business or whatever. Okay? So, just for example, when I was out there was an old lady, and she wanted, she was doing her business successfully. She was just selling peanuts on the street. And so she came and she was asking me for an investment, okay? Because she wanted to expand her business, and she could not find that investment. And do you know how much that was? $100. A simple $100. So I think that when you're talking about these micro businesses that are going on, these people that have businesses and they want to expand it, they don't have enough money to expand it because, you know what, they might just need a simple bicycle. They might just need a simple bicycle to be able to transport their stuff from the farm to the market. And they don't have that accessible. I think that's part of the problem that we have. And that is something that has to be conquered in the third world. Okay? And we need innovative ways of thinking and doing things to be able to deal with those types of issues. So we don't necessarily need people collecting food and all this stuff, sending it to Africa. That's not the answer, I don't think. Right? So that's just kind of my opinion on the whole thing. Now, the other factor I wanted to tell you about Kita is the fact that we actually bought some land for Kita that we are going to farm. We want to farm it ourselves for a couple of reasons. If we farm it ourselves, we can, the stuff that we produce, we feed the kids with. Makes perfect sense. And if we have any extra, we can also take that and market that and sell it and get whatever funds to support the school itself. The whole idea of the school is not for us to always find funding from the United States or from the Western world, but it's also for us to be able to establish, to become self-sufficient. Okay? To be able to not rely on donors. Certainly donors can help us expand what we have, but to maintain what we currently have or are currently doing, we want to be able to be self-supporting. So, those are some of the concepts of KEDA. Hopefully I'll get to talk to you guys, and if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. All right? Thank you. Bye.